Okay, so I heard the chime. That's my cue to go. I'm Jonathan Capehart, Associate Editor at the Washington Post, and I'm sitting next to a man who really needs no introduction, James Carville.
Thank you.
Okay, so James, I imagine that most of the people in this room have basically just one question for you tonight. See? How do you think tonight's going to go, and what do you think President Biden should do to come out as the winner of this debate?
Thank you, John. Thank you. And let me just start. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm afraid. I'm all of the things that you think I would be and all of the things that you are. I think tonight that President Biden is going to be very well prepared. Now, preparation is one thing, execution is another thing. All right, and I hope that he's able to execute on his prep. But I know most of the people who are preparing him, and they're quite good, and I think he'll be ready. But if I had one piece of advice, I would remind him what the first president of LSU, General W.T. Sherman, said about General Grant. He said, I'm smarter than Grant. I know more than he does. I know more about strategy, logistics, tactics, everything. But where Grant beats me every time is he don't give a damn about the enemy, and the enemy scares the hell out of me. Don't worry about Trump. Don't worry about what he's going to do. Be General Grant. Execute your plan. To hell with it. And if he does that, I think he'll do fine.
What do you mean by don't worry about Trump? Because, I mean, there's so many things. Is it don't worry about Trump screaming at you about fill in the blank topic, or don't worry about Trump lying about the 2020 election or the insurrection, or don't worry about Trump and his threat to democracy, or
are you going to tell people that the stock market is up, did you know that the crime rate is really down? Or are you going to tell people he's convicted of 34 felonies? Did you know that 26 women have come forward to credibly accuse him of sexual molestation? You just get new information to people. Don't tell them something that they already know. And if he's able to do that in a clever way, if you can walk out and say, well, I didn't realize that. And I don't know if he's going to stand behind you, if he's going to walk off a stage, if he's going to, talk about your son or anything else. Don't let that take you out of your game. You got to tell people 2 new things about him and 3 new things about you and your administration. And that's going to be the real key, because you're in a very, what you would call, I guess a finance guy call it, a very narrow trading range. Mm-hmm. All right? But if you pick up a 1.5 points, that's everything. But just execute your strategy. Because if you're sitting there, you can spend time wondering what crazy thing he's going to pull next, and it takes you out of your game. Don't let him do that. And when you're watching tonight, place extra value on something that people didn't know before. All right? That's the real key. What they don't know is they talk about the Trump economy. Actually, the first 3 years of the Trump economy were no better than the last 3 years of the Obama economy. Go find me one statistic that is better. You can't. The truth of the matter is, Biden led us to a recovery. We were in a recession when Joe Biden became president. We're in the middle of a recovery when Trump became president. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. And you got to remind people of that.
Let me push you on that one second.
Sure.
Because I agree with you. The president should go out there and remind people, tell people about his economic record. But in previous interviews, you have said that the president shouldn't be so rosy and cheery about the stock market doing well and lowest unemployment and the greatest job creation and all of that. And you've said that information should seep into the conversation. And then you picked up and said he should talk about 2 new things. So help me square that circle.
I don't think he should tell people how good they got it. He certainly is entitled to tell people, You certainly had it better than you had in January of 2021, all right? But understand this economy, if you notice, the president does better with older voters and not as well with younger voters, because to people like us, this is a great economy. Shit, you just throw spaghetti at the stock market and you make money, all right? Because most of us are net savers, they're net borrowers. They don't see themselves buying a house. They don't see themselves affording college. And you've got to sort of acknowledge that. And the most and Biden is already for things that are wildly popular and doesn't talk about them. One is raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That give America a raise. And now I say, well, that guy, wait a minute, he kind of understands what I'm doing. And people don't realize that 2025, the Trump tax cuts expire. We're going to go back, incomes over $400,000, and that's going to raise $4 trillion over 10 years, and we're going to take that money and put it into a first-time home buyers relief fund. Tell people you see them. Tell people you know what they're doing. They'll know. Do they know that he capped insulin costs? You know how devastating insulin costs are to a lot of families in the United States? They're devastating. It shows that you understand that they're facing these challenges. That's important.
And to your point about throwing spaghetti at the stock market is up 26 points today, just to let you know. One thing I noticed you didn't mention was student debt relief. Does that not factor in?
You know, first of all, there are a lot of shady operators, and but to most people, when we think of young people, we think of people that go to Ivy League schools, or go to UCLA, or Pomona, or something like that. That's not young people. And most people say, wait a minute, why am I paying somebody's student debt off when Harvard has an endowment of $52 billion? As Scott Galloway says, Harvard is a hedge fund that offers classes. All right? And yeah, there are people they're really bad on veterans, and there are people that really got snookered into this. But when you put student debt relief front and center, people recoil from that because in their minds, and again, there's a ton of shady operators in higher ed, don't get me wrong. They sold a bunch of people a whole bill of goods. They'd get these veterans, and boy, they had the GI Bill, and they would sign them up, and they would tell them that you were going. A lot of these specialty colleges that tell you guarantee we have a 95% placement rate if you do this, and you just sign right here. We'll sign you. Just sign right there. You don't have to worry about it. And then, of course, they have a 2% replacement theory, and you find out you're $200,000 in debt, and you've been lied to. And they lied to a lot of them. But I don't think I think the minimum wage increase to $15 is much better than student debt relief. I really do. And by the way, half the people 20 years old don't even go to college. And a lot of them are going to junior colleges or, state schools that are not that expensive. So I understand the need for some of this, but that's not what you want to lead with. That's just not what you want to lead with.
So, James, let's have you talk about or answer the question that is the animating purpose of why we're here, because the name of this conversation is Talking a Blue Streak. Have Democrats forgotten how to communicate? So answer that question. Have Democrats forgotten how to communicate?
So Democratic lapse into coastal language, and it's very, very unproductive. And when you start speaking in a language that people don't speak, they resent that. And if you start speaking like NPR, you're going to lose votes. So I tell people, there's one term that I just don't like the term communities of color. I don't know what the hell it means. So I live in New Orleans. So they got three guys on the street corner. I said, hey, fellas, how are things in the community of color today? They said, what's this son of a bitch talking about?
Seriously,
Jive-ass
James?
bastard out of here. All right? Talk to address people like they address each other. And we started on this coded language, and we let it get away from us. And people, it hurt us. And it's what I call coastal condensation, that we know what's best for you. Don't eat hamburgers, don't watch football, don't drink beer. Guess where our young male number is going? In the toilet. All right? Because Democratic messaging, I'm sorry, is too feminine. It just is.
Okay, James, I'm going to stop you right there, but we're going to keep going because I want to quote something you said. You told Donnie Deutsch earlier, actually a few weeks ago, on his podcast. I'm going to try to leave out some of the expletives. Here's what you said. Unless you want me to say the words. I mean, okay. So Donnie said, Donnie was asking you about the shrinking male support for Democrats, and you said, and I quote, "I think Democratic culture has too many preachy females. It's too much, don't eat hamburgers, don't watch football, wear a condom. Like, man, shit, leave me the fuck alone, okay? Like, I got a goddamn life to lead." And then he said, I call this cosmopolitan condensation. James. I get where you're coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
But there are a lot of people for whom, saying that there are too many preachy females might sound like you're a 20th century man in a 21st century country that has changed. So what's wrong with people saying, and by the way, it wasn't Democrats saying don't watch football. That was Republicans, but that's a digression. Talk to me and other people for whom what you said there is uncomfortable, maybe to some unconscionable.
If you think about Democratic messaging, listen to NPR. Read what comes out of there, all right? And you can see it. And I'm sorry, there are too many preachy females in Democratic campaign culture, all right? And we come across to people as judgmental, and that's not good at all. You can come across as understanding, and if the proof is not in the pudding, look at the male number of people that identify as Democrats. And you can keep talking like that, but one of the things that I found out, there are actually people who don't mind losing an election because it makes them feel better and superior. They ain't nothing short of winning. That's what you're about. If you don't win, you don't have shit. You're just running around with talking points. All right? And you don't win elections by telling people that their dietary habits are bad. Or they shouldn't be watching football and drinking beer at the same time. Not good. I got news for you. Football's popular. People watch it. And that's exactly what I mean, Jonathan. Sometimes I say things to be provocative, to make people think about it. I knew exactly what I was saying. I said it, I thought about it. I said it to Moren Dowd. I'm not going to give Moren an interview and not know what I'm saying, okay? And I wanted to provoke a discussion about democratic messaging and democratic language. And I think I succeeded. Thank you.
Well, speaking of Moren Dowd, you're talking about a column that she wrote in March of this year, where the opening anecdote was quite something. You were celebrating a female student in your class. You brought in some $15 or $25 champagne, and you were telling them how to open the champagne bottle. And I'm quoting from Moren Dowd, quoting you. I said, "Here's what you're going to do. You don't pop it like you see in the movies or you're going to poke somebody's eye out. You take the foil off. Now you're going to take a dishcloth and you're going to execute the classic counterclockwise movement. The bottle is going to go one way, the cork is going to go the other way. You just ease it out, and the sound that you're looking for is the sigh of a satisfied woman. I mean, you had me up until the sigh part, and I have to tell you, you know, as a writer, I thought, damn, that's some good imagery. I totally get that. And however, Maureen goes on to point out in the column that you were basically called to the dean's office
Right.
and was told that,
Right.
you know, someone complained about that.
Right.
And then you just decided, you know what? I'm not going to teach there anymore. And that got into the whole thing of your railing against what you call wokeism.
Yeah, I first of all, I don't, what I don't like is identity politics, all right? Where someone wants me to look at their identity and not their humanity. I can't do that. I got to look at your humanity first. But what happened was, I have a theory. I don't think anybody is an educated person that does not know how to properly open a bottle of champagne. I'm sorry. It's part of a complete education. If you send your child to my class, they're going to learn how to open a bottle of champagne. And the sigh of a satisfied woman has been in champagne culture. And actually, that, you know, it's been 50 years since I heard it, but...
Oh, my God.
But as best I can remember, it's a pretty good approximation.
You want me to write you an excuse note?
Yeah. What I did is I went back and showed them the Gilbert Gottfried aristocrats joke. All right? I just...
Which is the
nastiest
nastiest joke you've ever heard.
I understand, you know, it's the nastiest, dirtiest joke ever told. There's a whole movie on it, okay?
Yeah.
But I do believe that there's a connection between somewhat provocative language and people remembering the point that you're trying to make. And I see these people on television, they go on, they got 3 talking points. And it's just people gloss over it. And as a teacher, you know, I try to provoke my students into thinking about something a different way. And I always say, it doesn't matter, in this class, it doesn't matter what I think, it only matters that you think. Okay, that's all I'm interested in. So, yeah, I do, Jonathan, I do use some colorful language from time to time, but I think imagery, the other thing is, you have to communicate with imagery. People have to see, as they open a bottle of champagne, they have to think about the town they're looking for. If they see something, you got to connect. Speaking is not just vocal. Speaking is visual. Communication, vocal communication is also a visual art, and I really believe that.
So let's talk more about identity politics, because you just said, I don't like identity politics. I don't look at your identity. I look at your humanity. And yet, for a lot of people in the country, and I'll just speak for myself. I won't go and for all the people I represent. But for me, it's not identity politics. It's if people are out there marching in the streets, chanting Black Lives Matter, calling for justice for George Floyd. Is that identity politics, or is that are those Americans demanding that the government and society, and maybe even particularly the Democratic Party, look at their humanity through their lens as African Americans or communities of color for whom the experience of living in America is quite different?
Well, first of all,
why shouldn't they be seen in the politics and the rhetoric that we engage in?
Look, do I think that police brutality is a real issue? Of course I do. Do I think that defund the police are the 3 stupidest words in the history of the English language? Yeah, I kind of do. Okay?
Well, you're not going to get any argument from me on that.
I'll finish. I think what the things that I want to see would be very much in line with most of the people that the faculty lounge want, or whatever you want to call it. And if you want to change things, you got to do it through politics. Okay, that's what you got to do. You got to move public opinion. So there's a famous story about Martin Luther King and Andy Young were flying back from Oslo, and King had just received the Nobel Prize. And so he tells Andy, go tell a pilot I want to stop at Dulles. So stop at Dulles, and he said, let's go see the president. Lyndon Johnson was president. Of course, he made him wait 7 hours or whatever. And they go in there, and so Martin Luther King tells Lyndon Johnson, look, we appreciate your work on the Civil Rights Bill, but we really got to have voting rights. We're not going to advance this unless we get voting rights. And Johnson said, look, man, I'm using all my power to get this passed. I just don't have any more power to do this. So they go back to Dulles to get on the plane, and King tells Andy, said, the president needs more power. Let's go out and get him some. As opposed to shame. That's how Selma started. That was to change public opinion to buttress support in Johnson's number. King understood that politics was more important than language. That politics, that the way that you achieve real results is politically. Frederick Douglass stayed his time. He'd never get away from the White House because he knew that's where the power was. And I think that the whole post, summer of 2020, I understand what it was, but I don't think it was productive in getting people to focus on issues that you and I, or most people in this room, would find to be useful and beneficial. And that's my general point. And I don't have, I had most of my students were active. I don't, if I look at some of what the current thing I'm looking at now, are they really trying to affect a solution in Gaza, or they're just trying to feel good about themselves? I don't know. But I think that you should always have a political goal in mind and to do things like that. And I generally think straightforward, direct communications in everyday language is always the best way to communicate.
Well, I can confirm that your story about Andrew Young and King is 100% correct, because Ambassador Young told me the exact same story during an interview.
I just think it's a great story.
But the thing about that story is that getting the president some power was a two-lane highway. There was, getting him the power, but he got the power through the Selma marches and the beating of John Lewis and the gassing of those, tear gassing of those protesters. Those Selma marches in 1965 are the BLM marches, some could argue, of 2020. So why aren't the marches of 2020 the same as 1965? Is it the fact that the marches in 2020 have not yielded the political success that the Selma marches did?
Well, first of all, the people in the civil rights movement in the mid-'60s were all very accomplished people. And, if you read the history of the movement of Kennedy and King by my friend Harris Wofford, there's all kinds of things. I didn't see that kind of, out of the Black Lives Matter movement, I didn't see that kind of political savvy. It was more, you must do this because you have to do this, and we're right and you're wrong. And that is not how you get things done. All right? That's if you wanted to change and have, more training, more police training, more diversity, okay, that's fine. But focus on an objective that you want to accomplish that people can see. Not just sitting there, telling people that they're all wrong and everything else. And by the way, if you look at that whole thing, look what happened in New York 16 Tuesday. Look what happened in Buffalo. Look what happened in Minneapolis. Look what happened in Seattle. This is not a popular movement. This is not popular. People are not voting for it.
You're talking about the Gaza.
The identity. I just prefer it, but it was just a catch-all word. Woke is just kind of, to me, overused. But I think you've got to focus on objectives and how you accomplish these objectives through the political system. And I think that's what King and Andy, at some level, understood. By the way, we now got to be direct. We live in a country where abortion is illegal and bribery is legal. There's something wrong with that. Okay? Where the Supreme Court says it's a gratuity. They're so corrupt, it's unbelievable. I mean, not just the intellectual, legal corruption, the financial corruption that goes on is staggering. They literally ruled that a guy who got paid off $13,000, who had a contract with the county, that was a gratuity. That wasn't illegal.
So James, so on that point, because I was going to ask you to talk more broadly about how the Biden campaign is doing in its effort to communicate either what it's done or what it's going to do, or just its messages in the campaign. Should the Biden campaign, in addition to all the things you mentioned before, talk about the corruption of the Supreme Court and all of these things? What did you just say? Abortion is illegal, but bribery is legal. Right. So talk about the communication of the Biden-Harris campaign.
If tonight, my fondest dream is the president, the question of the Supreme Court comes up. President Biden says, first of all, I'm not outsourcing my Supreme Court picks. Secondly, I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'll interview every prospective nominee. I will ask two questions. The first question would be, do you believe, as I do, that there's an inherent right to privacy contained in the United States Constitution? A yes answer will bring you to the second question. Do you believe, as I do, that the Supreme Court should operate under a code of ethics and an enforceable gift ban as every other employee of the federal government operates under? Anything but a yes answer, you will be excluded. All right? And that's, you have bragged to your people numerous times that you were responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. Just be sure that everyone knows that. And you're going to score points with that. And you're going to score a lot of points. And just be very direct, very straightforward about it. And don't argue every case. Inherent right to privacy, enforceable gift ban. And that is popular, and it will help him. And it's a legitimate, clean attack. And he's not going to like it. And by the way, I would look at him and say, there's a referendum in Florida, and there's now a 6-week ban on abortion. How are you going to vote on that referendum? I'm sorry, you're running for president. Tell us, you're famously a resident and voter in Florida. How are you going to vote this November on that referendum? What you want to do is you want to frame and construct things in a very defined, targeted way. So I was the only national Democrat that went to Kansas in August of 2022. And I didn't think we were going to win by as much as we did. By the way, we have not lost an election since Dobbs. We literally have not lost. And this is a powerful kitchen table issue. And you can certainly frame it in a way, and people don't like this court. They don't like the fact that these people are outsourcing picks to the federal judiciary, and that's what they're doing. And you got to make that point, and you got to bring it home succinctly, clearly, and quickly. My dad was a college boxing used to be a big thing a long, long time ago. All right, he was a kind of a pretty good boxer at LSU, and he used to teach you as a kid. He said, "Get in, throw a combo, and get the hell out." That's what Biden needs to do. Go in, throw a quick combo, back off. Come back, quick combo, back off.
I'm not a boxer, but does that mean, should Biden go on the attack? Should he go on offense, or should he wait for Trump to be Trump and then react accordingly?
I think that he's got, and I think but he walks off that debate stage. If people find out 3 things they didn't know about the Biden administration and 2 things they didn't know about Donald Trump, you're going to be a winner. I give extra credit for new information. Now, it's not that we're talking about the Biden team. This is something Biden is not a great communicator. He's a great guy, but succinct, direct communications he's not Obama or Clinton or Reagan, all right? So it's a question of how he can execute. And that's more important than anything else. And you know, when you run a campaign, you have assets, all right? You have base, you have donors, you have volunteers, but your biggest asset is your candidate. That's the number one asset that a campaign has. In Biden politically, there's certain things that he just can't pull off as well as other politicians, and you have to adjust your campaign strategy to reflect that.
I'm going to throw it open to questions early, considering how many people are in here, and I'm sure there are lots of questions for you. So just a fair warning, get your questions ready. But before we go to them, I want to talk about the polls, because the polls have people freaked out. I mean, freaked out. You said in your interview with Donnie Deutsch, if you're not a bedwetter, you're stupid. And I think a lot of the bedwetting has to do with the fact that every time there's a poll that comes out, no matter who did the poll, no matter the sample size, no matter the margin of error, even if the margin of error is 10.3 plus or minus, folks lose their minds. Mm-hmm. So not walk us through, but tell us, how much credence should we be putting in the polls right now?
Okay, first of all, right now. Okay. But let me tell you, polling is actually pretty accurate. This is one of the great myths, that they just don't know how to poll anymore. Yeah, they kind of do. And if anybody read the polls in 2022, you would have known that the Democrats would do better than people thought. All right? If you look at the polling averages, is it perfect? No. But if you're not scared, you're stupid. Okay? If you say, "Oh, it's all going to be fine. I trust in the country." No, be scared. I am. And I think the stuff that's really problematic, that bothers me the most, is we have not very good numbers among under 30, and we have not very good non-white numbers. And in 2020, 17% of the electorate was under 30. Biden got 62%. 12% of the electorate was black. Biden got 89, 90%. You're not going to replicate the 2020 coalition. That's not going to happen. I think it can be better than it's polling right now, but you're not going to get 62 or 17 or 90 of 12. And, you know, we got to make that now. We're making it up a little bit with Biden. Is doing a little bit better than you think with over 65. And he's got to do better with the under 30, and he's got to do better with the non-white, particularly the black number. It's not good.
So on the black number, because, you know, the New York Times has its way of, you know, leading the conversation on things, and they had a poll, the New York Times Siena poll, I believe was back in March or April, that, you know, exploded this narrative that Biden's losing black support, and Donald Trump is getting 20% black support. 20% black support. Now, I could tell you as an African American, that man is not getting 20% black support. But I bring that up because folks took that as gospel. I dove into the numbers. Do you know what the sample size for that national poll of black voters with the 20% supporting Donald Trump, you know what that sample size was of a national poll? 119.
All right.
This is why I brought up the question about the polls and sample
So,
size.
right.
So,
Let me answer.
Yeah.
First of all, I see a lot of polls. And I just don't see the New York Times Center polls. I see statewide polls. I see Michigan polls. I see Pennsylvania polls. I see Wisconsin polls. I see Nevada polls. I see Arizona polls. Our black number's not where it needs to be. It's just not. And if you can take over the accumulated average, you're right. So you do 1,000 sample, on a good day, 12% of the electorate should be black. So you're basing this on 120 interviews. 12% of 1,000, I think, is 120. All right? And the error factor is plus or minus, I don't know, seven at 120 interviews. But there are other, if you're somebody like me and you see a lot of them, and you see people saying, we need to get better here, we're not doing that well, and we also need to get better with under 30 or under 35. And, I just have never, I see the White House says, we don't pay attention to polls. Oh, bullshit. You do pay attention to polls. I mean, Mike Donlin was a really good pollster, all right? And, is it the be-all or end-all? And can you find, and one of the great things that people do is they find one thing wrong with a poll, and they seize on that. Every poll's got something wrong with it, but the aggregate, and you can go to 538, you can go to Real Clear Politics, they aggregate them all, they give you a right number. And that's a pretty decent reflection of where we are. And when the thing that I always believe, if we got a problem, let's find out what it is and see how we address it. And you can shoot the poster, but that's generally not a good idea.
and so on that, we've got 12 minutes. So I'm opening this up 2 minutes ahead of time. We have mic runners here and here. Please ask a question. Please make it short. Please, no speeches, and I don't mean to be rude, but if you launch into a speech, I will interrupt you, and I'll be rude doing it. Okay, so you've been talking to me since like 2 minutes into this, so we're gonna start with you here. Short question. And then let's see someone here in the middle who might have a question who can go next.
Okay, so you're saying that in a campaign, the primary asset is the candidate.
Right.
In this case, you have a candidate who many people think his age is a problem, whether I do or not. Wouldn't the antidote to that be a popular, strong VP that people have confidence in? So the Democrats are telling us every minute this is the most important election of our lifetime, and yet I feel like they have. The question is, haven't they left a problem in this pair of assets?
Jonathan,
Thanks for your question.
Answer as well. They're not going to change. They're not. It's just they're just not. And if they did, it would be an eruption. It'd be a story that would go on forever. Look, I didn't think it was a good idea for President Biden to run for re-election. I was very vocal about it. All right? It didn't work. Here we are. We got to go to war with the army we got. Okay. And the army we got right now, and it's probably not going to change, is Biden-Harris. And I'll defend the vice president a little bit, and people don't point this out. Biden's approval is like 38. Well, the vice president can't be, by political gravity, can't be any higher than the president. So let's say she's at 35. Well, I mean, she's about 90% or better of where she can be. I mean, it's not, and they say things, and I think this is true. I have never heard a male candidate's voice described as screechy, ever. And I think that I think you have a point there, but it's it's not going to change. We're just here. I'm sorry. Thank you.
So we've got 10 minutes, and I see the lady here, the guy. Hold on one second. The guy in the white shirt with the glasses on the top of his head, and then this man right here in the front who had his hand up for a long time right after her. Okay. No. The young lady with her hand up, then the guy in the white shirt. Please, sir, could you let the lady who had her hand up before you? Thank you. Then you're next.
Alive. Yeah, chivalry's alive. When you mentioned about the women being preachy, when I look at the Democratic Party, I mostly see men talking at me most of the time. And what's confusing to me is, why does that preachy stuff work so well for the Republicans then? They are literally preaching at us, and it's really popular. So why is that okay?
So maybe it's my soon-to-be 80 hearing. What's the gist of the question, Jonathan?
Why is it okay for Republicans? Well, one, she said men have always been preaching within the Democratic Party, but in the Republican Party, Republicans are preaching all the time, and it seems to go well for them.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not a Republican. I don't like their culture at all. But they do, and always the question, could you imagine if this happened and this was a Democrat? But what motivates their voters is we wouldn't put the incompetence. All right, if you're a Democrat and you have somebody as incompetent as James Comer or as incompetent as Jim Jordan, you would say something on TV, Jonathan. You'd say, we have to expect better out of our party than this. I would say something. This is stupid. What are these people doing? They accept that level of buffoonery and incompetence. They actually like it. All right? Have you ever seen anything more incompetent in your life? And they kept telling these people it was going to be. The Congressman from Louisiana, Clay Higgins, was sanctioned by the Anne Frank Foundation. How in the hell you get sanctioned by the Anne Frank Foundation? I mean, you got to be a bad dude for the Anne Frank people not to like you. All right? And we wouldn't have that in our culture, and nor should you stand for it. They like stupidity and incompetence.
All right, the guy in the white shirt, and then, ma'am, could you, go ahead.
James, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're assisting with the American Bridge and why it's important in the 3 battleground states?
Great,
Thank you. So I work for a Democratic super PAC called American Bridge. Our entire, we do not believe that in presidential elections all voters are created equal. In fact, some of them are created horribly unequal. And we focus on 77 counties in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, because if you do the math, you got to sweep those 3 in the 2nd Congress, the Nebraska district. And so we try to take areas where you would expect us to lose 80-20 and lose 73-27. And our theory is that changes sea level. All right, if we can show 5% improvement in these counties, if we're not going to get the vote out of Philadelphia or Wayne, Detroit, or Milwaukee in 2024, so it's really important that we go into people that you don't ordinarily think and cut, and our whole theory is cut your losses short. And that's where, and we spend a lot of money on what we consider to be prime targeted voters. And I think it's a project that makes a lot of sense. We were successful with it in 2020. If you run a play and you score a touchdown, run a thing again. Okay, good. You go out and run a hook pattern, you run a crossing pattern, and great. And I think that, and I'm not saying that other things that people do or GLTV programs, there's one thing is most people I assume in here are part of the, progressive infrastructure, whatever you want to call it. You must read the book, The Fall of Roe, by Lisa Lear another reporter for the Times, Diaz, or some, she was actually like I got a Princeton theological. The incompetence of Washington progressive advocacy groups is staggering. All right, and they just out-organized them, and they just beat us on the ground. All right, and we thought if we went to wine and cheese parties that we would fix everything. And they were going to school board meetings, they were targeting state legislators, they were putting money behind attorney general's candidates, they were doing, and we were all sending money to Amy McGrath, okay? And a lot of people in here support a lot of these things. You demand, you see what they're doing. And I want to win politically. And, Bernie Sanders famously said in 2016, winning the election is not important, having the argument is important. No, winning the election is important, not having an argument. Screw the argument, win the election. And when you read it, and I had Lisa on my podcast, you just go, oh, God, oh, my God, did we really do that? Yeah, we really did that. And I'll never forget when you had the great Wendy in the Texas legislature, and all that.
Davis.
And they started singing "The Eyes of Texas," which is the University of Texas Austin song. 80% of the people in the Texas legislature can't stand the University of Texas Austin. All right, if you don't live and appreciate the culture, you think that way. And these groups, they're nice people. Don't get me wrong. A lot of them are friends of mine, but they don't understand politics, human motivation, organization, picking a fight, winning the fight, moving to the next fight. That's what's important.
All right, we've got 2 questions and 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
If you were advising President Biden on how to get a big point out of Donald Trump, would you bring up or would you shed light on Project 2025, and what would you say about it?
About what now?
Say it something again.
Slower. If you were advising President Biden on how to get a big point out of Trump on the debate tonight, would you have him put light on Project 2025, and what would you have him say about it?
I wouldn't focus on Project, although it's horrible. What he's talking about is they have a plan to do away with civil service.
Among other things.
Yeah, like career person, a career meat inspector, or career EPA. One thing people don't realize, there are hugely talented people that work for the United States government. I mean, Bob Rubin famously said, when I went from Goldman Sachs to the Treasury Department, I didn't see a 1% decline in talent. There's staggeringly talented people that work for you, and they're going to get rid of all of them. And they're actually telling you. But you understand what's happening in Louisiana. You got to understand, this is the opening, and I'm not being a scaremonger here. This Christian nationalism shit is as serious as a heartbeat. And it's so anti-American, and anti-historical, you can't believe it. What they say is that the First Amendment applies only to Christians. I'm not making that up. And Roger Williams, the greatest, probably other than maybe King, Martin Luther King, Roger Williams, probably the 2 greatest Protestant clerics ever. Roger Williams says forced worship causes a stench in God's nose. All right? Look at what Jefferson has said about this. But I'm telling you, don't brush this off as some crazy crap down in Louisiana. A lot of this stuff started, Mike Johnson, just go to James Carville Explains Mike Johnson, YouTube. I know all of these people, and they're crazy, and they're committed. And that's what, and Leonard Leo, that's what they are. You saw Martha Alito, the flag, the Christian nationalist flag. That says I think I would be okay. I think I'm a Catholic. I think so. Maybe I can still have some freedom, but that's maybe some of you not so much.
In the 12 seconds we have left, the last question.
I think the most decisive factor tonight in the the debate, is going to be Biden's lack of ability to project, and he projects weakness. I mean, we all love him, but he just seems like a very weak candidate because of the way he speaks. I wish that everybody was going to care about the intellectual politics of the situation tonight. But if you think of all the testosterone exuding, uneducated men that watch Fox News, all they care about is the strength that Trump portrays when he said he's going to grab them by the you-know-what, because they all wanted to do that their whole life. And
Okay, yeah. And so,
anyway.
And so, what do you say to that, James?
Again, I go back to the project you asked me about. We have to lose these people less bad. We're not going to carry non-college white males. But you don't have to get as beat as bad as you are. That's my message. All right? And there are things that President Biden can do or say that can move the needle somewhat. But when you have a demographic distortion in a political model, it distorts everything. And if you start talking about losing, vast percentage, you lose a lot. And by the way, most of the stuff that you can communicate, you know what the most popular thing in all of polling is? Taxes on people make over $400,000 a year. It's wildly popular. Use it. And you know who likes it? High school white males, males of color, males of this, females of that. It's popular. Raising the minimum wage is popular. I tell you what's not popular is offering all company executives the power to write their own plan if they give you $1 billion. All right, that's not popular. Bring that up. That's what he did. And there's so much macro messaging that can touch so many people that you need. But understand that you have to communicate on this macro messaging, not micro issues. And I hope that he can do that tonight. I will tell you that I know the people that are preparing him. They're very talented, knowledgeable people. I don't have any doubt that he's going to be well prepared. Now, execution, I asked John McKay one time what he thought about his team's execution. He said, well, it'd be a good idea.
Well, on that note, I want to leave you with two points. One, on James's point about not getting white males, everyone should remember that no Democrat running for president has won the white vote since 1964. And then I'm going to leave you with another superb quote from the great James Carville: "Screw the argument, win the election." James Carville.